Hare Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Tasmatvam indriyani adav niyamya bharatarishava. He says, you begin your auspicious spiritual life by controlling your senses. So the senses, in the mind, then the intelligence, then ego, and beyond all of them is the soul proper. But this has a very deep significance, this particular instruction. I'll tell you a little story, it will make it clear for you. Once upon a time, a king sent his son to a sage in the forest and told him, my dear boy, you go and live with the guru in the Gurukula, subdue your behavior, become submissive, become free from anger, free from lust, free from greed and envy and such kinds of things. Without cleansing your heart, you won't be able to take the rule and become my capable successor. So, go and take advantage of the saintly persons living in the Tapovanam. So, because it was the father's order, the prince agreed to go. But the prince was not actually inclined to take the training. He actually wanted to lead a very lavish life, and he was also a glutton. He would eat all kinds of food, anything that was delicious for the tongue. He didn't care about prasad. And he was uncontrolled in his senses. He also was like a Sri Lampat. He was attracted to women, all kinds of women. That is why the father had sent him to Guru. Now the prince, when he went to Guru's ashrama, he saw, the saintly persons were living in hermitage and cottages and everything. And that place was too austere for him. Then he saw everybody is too serious about spiritual life. So he told the sage that, although my father told me to live in Gurukula, I would rather live slightly away, not in the Gurukul with you. Is it all right? Guruji said, okay, it's all right. So he lived nearby. And then, as his father had told him, he is supposed to go to Guru and learn things. So the father had sent one servant with him to go with him also. So the prince saw that the food that the rishis are eating is too sattvic. So he told his servant, you don't bring me that food. You cook different things for me. So they cooked, the servant was cooking as per his demand. He was eager to eat very spicy and very salty, very hot kinds of foods and everything. So the rishi, the Guruji who was teaching him told him, see, your spiritual life begins with food. Jaisan Vaisaman. So, if you really want to take Gurukula training, you start with your food which is very mild-natured. And when you eat that type of food, then your mind will be calm and you'll be able to focus on your spiritual practices. And the prince would never say anything opposed to Guruji. He immediately would bow down and say, yes, Guruji, thank you. But then he told his servant, you continue working the same way. He was externally respectful, but in real life, he was not following Guru's instruction. Then the Guru told the cook, hey, I will tell you the menu, how to cook for the prince. But the cook will not listen to the rishi. He said, no, I am sent to assist the prince. If you tell me cook simple things and then he is telling me cook spicy things, I am getting confused. But I have to follow whom? Prince only. So I will follow the prince. Then the sage complained to the king. See, you are telling me to give Gurukula training to your son. But he is in no mood to take the training. He is just eating all kinds of things. But as long as he is eating these kind of things, my effort to train him will be like pouring ghee in ashes. He is not going to become properly trained. The king said, really? Good that you connected with me. Then the king and directly told the cook, "Hey cook, you should cook as per what the Rishi tells you, what the Guruji tells you. Accordingly you should cook. Don't cook what my son is telling you, prince is telling you." So then the cook became frightened. Now the order has come from the king himself. So then he told the prince, "I'm sorry, see, if you want any other menu, you have to tell king." But he was afraid of his father because he knows his father wants to purify him. Correct, no? So now he couldn't say anything, and the Rishi prescribed the menu. And this is how the menu should be. And then the prince had to live with that. Then as soon as he started eating very sattvic, very simple type of prasad, his passions of lust and anger and greed and avarice, all these things went down gradually. Then he became inclined to listening to the sage. Because even to listen to the sermons, the message, and to contemplate on the message, one requires some amount of peace of mind. He started listening. And now the sage could impart the lessons and tell him what to do, what not to do. And the first thing the sage told them, "My dear prince, you have to follow Maunavrata. Keep your mouth shut. Speak as less as possible. Because when you speak too much, then you won't be able to know in which direction your life is leading you to. You should actually keep your mouth shut and speak only what is necessary, and also listen to what words are coming out of your mouth." So this is one instruction he gave him. And I don't say you don't speak. Instead of that, every day you increase your chanting, he told them. Increase the number of rounds of chanting. So the prince tried that. Instead of but speaking all day, instead of that, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, he increased that. So then the spiritual sounds started emanating from his mouth, and material sounds, number of sounds which came out from his mouth became reduced. That became reduced. So the sage told him, "This is another thing that will give you calmness in the mind." So the prince observed that. So on a certain day, he said, Guruji had told him, one day in a week, absolutely keep Maunavrata. Don't speak anything. On that day, the prince realized there are certain things he wants, but without speaking, he can't get them from the servant. Then he himself has to go and do them. Correct, no? So by restraining the speech factor, he saw that many of his passions became subdued. So keeping control of his words and increasing the chanting of the holy name and eating foods which are sanctified foods, which are pure and of sattvic nature. So in this way, and then aligning with the instructions of the Guru, the prince saw that is growing in his spiritual maturity. He was growing over a period of time. So this story has a very great significance. You see, here there is king, there is sage, there is prince, and there is cook. 4 people are involved in this. So who are these 4 people? The sage is the good intelligence. So now the good intelligence and the prince is the mind, and the cook is the senses. Now, certainly the senses are subordinate to the mind. Similarly, the cook is subordinate to the prince. Correct, no? And the sage, by dint of his maturity and wisdom, he is superior to the prince. Is it not true? Similarly, intelligence is superior to mind. Isn't it? And who is the king? King is the soul, or the Atma. So the Atma should know what is in my interest. That's the most important thing. Because Atma can have connection directly with intelligence, or with the mind, or with the senses. Atma has connection to all the 3, because all these 3 are getting their power from whom? From Atma only, from the soul only. See, The senses, the mind and intelligence, they all are dead entities. None of them have any power to function. They are as dead as this carpet or this table. They have no life. But they become animated, they have life only when the soul is present. And the soul can directly connect with all these three. With the intelligence of the mind or the and the soul is the resident of the body. Therefore, the soul should know what is good for me, what is bad for me. Uddared atmanatmanam atmanam avasadayet atmaiva hi atmano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmanah bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmanajitah anatmanastu shatrutve vartet atmaiva shatruvat. So, in these verses, Krishna is telling about how one should elevate oneself using the mind and not degrade oneself. So whom is he talking about? He's talking about the soul. He's telling, hey dear soul, use your mind to elevate yourself. Use your intelligence to elevate yourself. Control your senses. That means you are the soul and you have these equipments given to you. And you should know how to harness these equipments in such a way that you will get the best advantage out of this. So, this is the reason why Krishna says, he says that tasmatvam indriyani adau. Adau means the other things. Like for example, start with the indriya, then the mind, then he says, then the intelligence. Now somebody may ask, if you strengthen the intelligence, it will naturally control the mind, then it will naturally control the senses. Then why is Krishna saying, start with senses? Therefore, the senses are the cook in this story. So you have to control that fellow, because he is the fellow cooking and giving things. Because like these 5 fingers are connected to the palm, similarly the senses are supplying inputs to the mind. If you don't control the sense, now for example, intelligence knows which food is good for you, which is not good for you, correct, no? But if intelligence tells the senses, so intelligence goes by reason. But the senses and the mind, they act instinctively. You will see that. They go by pleasure. So senses and mind, they go by the pleasure. Then how are you going to stop the senses from doing nonsense? For that the soul himself should understand that this is not good for me, and he has the ability to restrain the senses directly also without having to go through intelligence and the mind also. How? That's why we say Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chittete Koryaikya Arana Koriho Mane Asha, he says. He says that once the soul is sincerely and very properly has heard the information, he has understood this is beneficial for me, this is harmful for me, then he can directly control the senses. He can tell the senses, you cannot do this because Guru has told not to do. This is not good for me. Yeah. And of course, you can use intelligence for reasoning. That is another thing. But you have to actually come from the soul itself should know what is good, what is bad. So now the Guru is good intelligence. In the place of good intelligence, we should post Krishna there. Just like you see in Arjuna's chariot, if the horses are the senses, mind are the road, then who is sitting at the driver's seat? Krishna is sitting. So is he not intelligent? Just see. Arjuna has replaced his own intelligence by Krishna there. He has put Krishna there. So one should bring the Lord in the heart. That actually bringing the good intelligence is ultimately done by the soul. The soul has to accept the good intelligence. There is a kubuddhi, there is a subuddhi. Right, no? Kaikeyi accepted kubuddhi. Like Dhritarashtra accepted kubuddhi. You can see that. Vibhishana accepted subuddhi. So, therefore, here you see the king was convinced that what Rishi is teaching my prince, that is the right thing. And that's what should be done at any cost. The first intelligent thing that the king did was to send his son for training to the Gurukula. That's the first intelligent thing he did. And the second thing, He took the Rishi's complaint seriously. What was the Rishi's complaint? Rishi told, your son is not taking training. So many of you will see, we have shaved off, we have come to our temple, we have joined the ashram, but you find that, the mind is not listening to spiritual life. We will see that. Actually, the nature of the mind is to be fickle. Chanchalami Mana Krishna, he says that. So the prince, he is a fickle prince. He always runs here and there. And the mind actually is the master of the senses. So when the prince went for training, he took the cook with him and then he ate all kinds of things. Similarly, if we are going to live in the ashram and just to do all kinds of things with the senses which are your servants, then the mind and the senses take over your spiritual life. And definitely they will sell you to Maya. 100% guaranteed. You will see that. If you are simply going to act on the platform of mind and senses, senses are impure, they chase after Maya, hankering for enjoyment, and the mind is fickle and emotional and sentimental. And these two things will sell you to Maya, and you will be sold out, you will be finished. Therefore, the prince and the cook combination is very deadly combination. But one good thing that happened in this story, which I told you, is that the king understood what is good for his son, ultimately. So he could, and also he was respectful to the saintly personality. So then he could actually put his son through the training properly by empowering the sage and disempowering his son. That's why we say Guru Mukha Padmavakya, Chittite Kuriya Akya, Arana Korihumane Asha. Don't listen to my son. Arana Korihuman. Throw him out of the window, rascal. Throw him out. Because of him, you are listening to him, you are feeding him things which are ruining him. He said, Arana Korihumane Asha. But Guru Mukha Padmavakya, Chittite Kuriya Akya. You should listen to what the sage tells you to cook. That you should cook. So when we say cook, we only think about food, but all our five senses are food. We say, Chandera Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanevas. Before that we say, Ichai Gosai Jar Muyita Radas, Kansabara Padarenu Mora, Panchagras. The five senses have five types of food. So, in this way, the Rishi is prescribing food for all his five senses. What to take in, what to pick, what to drop, what to receive, what to reject, what to accept, what to not accept. So, earlier the prince was superficially respectful and cheating the sage. And that was not allowed subsequently, because now the sage got the, sometimes they give power of attorney. Correct? So the king gave power of attorney to whom? To the prince or the sage? Sage. Similarly, when the soul gives power of attorney to the intelligence, good intelligence, which is saintly intelligence, then mind and the senses can be brought under control properly. And therefore Krishna says that this cook is the fellow who is spoiling everything. Because it's the senses. The senses are supplying wrong inputs. They have to be controlled when the soul understands his own. That's why he says, Bhukta Bhoga Parityakta Drishta Dosha Chanityasha Na Ishwarasya Ashubham Datte Sve Mahimni Statasya. This verse says, when the spirit soul is able to get the vision to see Drishta Dosha Chanityasha. He is able to see the faults in his life. I am leading spiritual life, but there are so many faults in my spiritual life. I have to, pluck out these faults, remove these faults. So when you understand, then Bhukta Bhoga Parityakta, then he can give the enjoying mentality. So without giving up that enjoying mentality, simply chasing after Maya day after day, month after month, and hoping that everything will be all right, things won't be all right. Now, although the king had sent his son for a good training program under the sage, and prince was pretending to the father that I am taking training. But what training he was taking? He was taking training to become a bigger sense gratifier. Isn't it? So somebody that is why there are so many stories you hear. Somebody may leave the world and come into the fold of ashrama. Guru's ashrama, they can become bigger sense gratifiers, and world has seen that. Is it true or not? It can happen. Why? Because the prince is being fed by the cook. The mind is being fed by the senses. And it is the mind and senses that go scot-free, and then they do all nonsense. That is over. Hare Krishna. It's coming now. Hare Krishna. Light is not coming, but the sound is coming. Alright? So, what was the last thing I was saying? Huh? World has seen that people say that, now I am a religious person, I am a pious person, I am a spiritual person, I have joined the ashram. Externally it looks very nice, but then the world has seen that the people who claim to be religious and pious, they can become even more degraded than people who are living outside, who are doing their duty to wife and children and family and doing job. There are people who lead a proper life also, correct? So these people can become more degraded. Why they become degraded? Because the mind and senses have made a joint program of enjoying and not considering the ultimate welfare of the soul. So, as spirit souls, you are the most powerful in this whole system of soul, intelligence, mind, senses and all these things, because all these are dead entities. You have the power, and you are a part and parcel of the Lord. So naturally you are the one who is empowering the other things given into your system. So you have the right to, a king for example, the sage appreciates the king as a Radheshyam, and cook also has great respect for the king, the prince has respect for the king. Similarly, in this body, all these different avenues, facilities given to you, they are all given for your deliverance. They are given to you so that you can go back to Godhead, utilizing these things. So you should not allow any of them to degrade your purpose. If you allow it to degrade your purpose, then one is called as Atmaha. That verse is there, no? Radheshyamdam sulabham sudurlabham plamam sukalpam guru karnadharam mayanukulena nabhasvateritam puman bhavabdim nataret sa atmaha. If one has got a guru karnadhar, which means the captain, Guruji is there, and the favorable winds of the scriptures are there, and the boat of the human form of life is there, everything is there. But if one doesn't cross over the ocean of samsara to go to spiritual world, he is called as Atma Ha, killer of the soul. So this prince was actually like a killer of the soul, because Rishi was there, Shastric knowledge was there, good instructions were there, but he was very nicely cheating his father, sitting in the forest, doing his own program by engaging senses in nonsense. So sense engages in nonsense. So, but the father was intelligent because he was regularly getting reports from the sage. Is my son getting purified, sir? Sage said, no. Similarly, we have to consult our good intelligence and then see, I have come into the fold of the Brahmacharya ashrama. Is my, mind and senses getting purified, and are they helping eventually? Are we going towards the deliverance, going back home, back to Godhead, or are we going in the opposite direction? So one has to always watch the way our life is going. Why do we take our time for camps like this? Whole idea is, the temple life sometimes becomes super busy and we get into a rut. Run, I have to do this, I have to do that. Getting things done becomes the goal of life, correct, no? Some or other, Janmashtami is coming now, then Gaurpurnima is coming now, Marathon is coming, one after another, the activity takes precedence over contemplation while we are in the temple. So we run, and then in the course of running, we don't get to see whether I am improving or I am degrading. And in the course of activity, we always look for opportunity for sense gratification also. So, therefore, one should You as a spirit soul should be observer. As Krishna said in the second chapter about Sita Prajna, one should be an observer of one's mind, one's senses, one's intelligence, and one should ascertain one's direction. Am I becoming Tasya Prajna Pratishtita? Am I becoming a person of fixed intelligence, focused on the super soul? Or I am doing a drama of spiritual life, still increasing my hankerings for the opposite sex, increasing my hankering for eating program, eating and sleeping, increasing, my sense gratification. So one has to be a very good observer. Like the king was supervising, although king was not seeing the sun directly, he was consulting the sage about, is the purpose being served by sending my son to the jungle? Otherwise tomorrow he remained a sense gratifier just for a few years and then came back with no change of heart, with no change of heart, with no progress in his discipline and training, and he can't become a good prince. He can't become a good king later. So, our mind should be brought to such a stage of purity where the mind develops fondness for Krishna, love for Krishna. Man mana, Krishna says, think of me, but when can I think of Krishna? Unless I am making an effort to keep the mind pure. Because Lord can be welcomed only in a pure house. Like if Guruji is going to come to the house, people clean up the house and put rangoli and put flower bed and everything to welcome. They lit up the lamp and keep the altar nice and house clean. Then only Guruji can come. You can't keep all garbage in the house and welcome the Guruji, isn't it? Similarly, for Krishna to be welcomed, the mind is the prince who requires to be trained. And the prince has to be trained, the senses have to be put some restriction. So therefore Krishna is emphasizing on sense restriction. Start from there. Tasmat tvam indriyani adav niyamya bharatarshava is saying. Because the senses are the entry point of sense gratification. So make sure. So Guruji told, keep mauna vrat. Fast on Ekadashi days. So these two are restrictions for the mouth. Actually, by fasting, your vigor for passionate activities reduces by fasting. And by keeping mauna vrat, the vigor of the mind to talk nonsense is restricted. So in this way, the passion in the body and mind is easily restricted by mauna vrat and by fasting on Ekadashi day. And the positive activities are the chanting of the holy name and glorification of the holy fame. By repeatedly glorifying the Lord by speaking on Srimad Bhagavatam and spiritual subject matters as much as you can to as many people as you can. Speak the glories of the Lord and chant the holy name as soon as you get some time. So in this way, by this the spiritual energy becomes multiplied. It is expanded more and more. Then the soul becomes, very strongly situated and awakened and realized. Then it can very easily take advantage of the intelligence, spiritual intelligence to purify our existence and go back to God. So the chanting of the holy name we are doing every day, but when we come out like this for camps and that kind of programs, one should become contemplative and be attentive. Now when we are chanting the holy name, definitely some thoughts will arise. So one can observe what are the quality of thoughts that arise in my mind. Are they dirty, lusty, greedy, angry thoughts? Or are they service-related thoughts? Are they prayerful thoughts? Are they thoughts of supplication, humility, tolerance, patience, expecting Lord's mercy and all that? What type of thoughts are arising? So that is a barometer of our spiritual life. That gives a clue. In this way, brahmachari life, sadhu life means contemplative life. So we are a International Society for Krishna consciousness. It doesn't say International Society for Krishna activities. Activities are external, but consciousness is internal. So by internally observing our consciousness and purifying it more and more, then we become internally very strong. Otherwise, we may externally go through the motion of activities, but internally we may keep our impurities. So the purpose of joining the ashram is to purify our mind. And that fellow requires training. Like the prince needed the training. He's a passionate prince doing naughty activities, mischievous activities, of lusty activities and eating like a glutton. So he has to be put through training. All of you ask yourself, is our mind a very trained mind? Or a nasty mind? Our mind is like that prince only. He requires to be thinned. So when he lives in the ashram of Guru, then he becomes thin by doing service and by keeping calm and by chanting the holy name. So these are simple procedures that our Vaishnava acharyas have taught how we can bring the mind under control and take advantage of the mind to deliver ourselves. Buddharet Atmanatmanam. Let us deliver ourselves. Harinam Prabhu ki. Let's offer our humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord who are just like the trees or ocean of mercy and full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha krupa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha ananta koti vaishnava vrindaki vaishnava thakur srila prabhupada ki Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki